Staying at home during a lockdown, with much time to eat and little movement at the same time. No wonder that many people all over the world have gained weight during the pandemic. And while it is quite a stretch from too much comfort eating to straightforward gluttony, too much body fat is bad for our health. In fact, those additional pounds can increase our risk of severe illness from COVID-19.
I am overweight and I think I need to lose a bit of weight so that in case I get infected, I'm not in the danger zone.
Excess weight has always been a health risk. In times of the coronavirus pandemic, it could be lethal. Welcome to our COVID-19 special on DW News. I'm Monica Jones in Berlin. Good to have you with us. Now then, when it rains, it pours. It's the perfect idiom for overweight and obese people these days. They already have enough health worries as it is. And now a tiny virus is adding to their plight, putting them into the same risk category as the elderly and especially vulnerable.
Dr. Markus Reiser heads the COVID-19 unit here in Klinikum West, a hospital in Western Germany. Most of the serious cases they've seen here during the pandemic are elderly patients, as well as another high-risk group.
What we've seen on our COVID unit is that patients who are overweight, especially those who are morbidly obese, have worse outcomes in this infection. They're more likely to need intensive care.
Studies in several countries have shown a link between excess weight and severe COVID-19 outcomes. Sylvia Schaefer is overweight, and she survived a COVID-19 infection in early March. First, she developed a sudden fever and a dry cough. A few days later, she tested positive.
I was in the hospital and they told me I was a risk patient and that it could end fatally.
2 years earlier, she had been diagnosed with diabetes. To get the disease under control, she changed her diet and lost a lot of weight. She's convinced that helped her to get through the COVID-19 infection relatively easily.
If COVID-19 had appeared a year earlier than it did, I don't think it would have ended that well for me. With poorly managed diabetes and high blood pressure and much more excess weight than now, 35 kilograms, I think that would have finished me off.
Obesity has become a global phenomenon. It's usually expressed using the body mass index, or BMI, which is the ratio of a person's body weight in kilograms to the square of their height in meters. A BMI of 20 to 25 is considered a healthy weight, 25 to 30 overweight, 30 to 40 is classified as obese, with over 40 viewed as severely obese.
We don't just have a COVID pandemic, we have an obesity pandemic all around the world and in Germany too.
At Klinikum West's specialized obesity center, Martin Büsing is a bariatric surgeon. He can hardly keep up with the many obese people seeking gastric bypass surgery and other weight loss procedures.
In Germany, their numbers are climbing. At the moment, more than 2 million people in the country would qualify for this kind of surgery with a BMI of over 40.
Also ein Body Mass Index in der Regel von über 40 haben.
Severe obesity goes hand in hand with a number of other conditions, including diabetes, respiratory problems, cardiovascular diseases. Dr. Büsing puts this development mainly down to poor dietary habits and overconsumption of sugary drinks.
What I see again and again in our overweight patients is that they simply can't drink plain unflavored water, soda water or tap water. They always need some kind of sweetener in it. It's developed into a kind of addiction.
Better prevention can help. But when it comes to that, health systems often fail. And the food industry has a powerful interest in the nutritional agenda. Both these problems explain why the doctors here continue to battle two pandemics, COVID-19 and obesity.
Now, for more, I'm joined by Susan Jepp, nutrition scientist and professor of diet and population health at the University of Oxford. Good to have you with us. Let me start straight away with the way our report ended. It mentions there that we're battling two pandemics, obesity and COVID-19. Would you agree?
I absolutely would. I mean, in the UK, we're facing the incredibly sad situation that we've had over 70,000 deaths from COVID. That's awful. It attracts headlines every single day. But the fact is that around 60,000 people's deaths are attributable to obesity every single year. Obesity is a problem which has been with us for decades and shows no sign of going away. There is no vaccine for obesity.
Right. So it has been a big problem even before the pandemic. However, now with the pandemic, it seems to be exacerbated. And you've conducted a study involving 7 million people looking at the connection between obesity and COVID-19. What are your findings?
Well, some colleagues have a fantastic data set which draws on data from primary care health records, so electronic health records. So it's all anonymized, but we don't know who these people are, but we do have data about their weight and about whether they have had a positive COVID test, whether they've been admitted to hospital and so forth. What we were able to look at was the relationship between people's BMI, their body mass index, so a measure of their weight status, and the likelihood of going into hospital or being admitted to intensive care or dying from COVID. And what we saw was that there was a striking association with these, if you like, severe outcomes from COVID, in particular admission to intensive care. So for people with a body mass index of 30, the level that we say people have clinical obesity, actually your chances of going into intensive care are about 3 times greater than somebody with a healthy weight.
Right.
By the time your BMI reaches 40, it's over 6 times higher.
Now, of course, but the problem is, to a large extent, that a lot of people are not aware, certainly not aware of their BMI, or that they are viewed as obese and are at such risk.
Well, many people might not consider themselves to perhaps be living with obesity, but I think many people are aware that they're a bit heavier than perhaps is good for their health. The problem is that we've struggled to convert that sort of general understanding that weight's a bit of a problem into a real sense of the need to act. And what perhaps COVID has started to do is make us really recognise that obesity isn't just about how we look. Actually, the really important issue is the effect it has on our health.
Right.
And obesity affects every single organ system of the body. So we know it leads to more diabetes, more heart disease. Many different cancers are increased. People have problems with their joints. There's a whole raft of ill health that goes with obesity. So it's perhaps not so very surprising that this extra strain that being overweight puts on your body also increases your risk from COVID.
Now, of course, we hear all the time that we have to protect the elderly, the vulnerable, but nobody ever talks about protecting the overweight, the obese. What can we do about that?
Well, we need to recognise that being severely overweight creates real vulnerability. And so I think we need to kind of add these to our list of people who need take extra care during the pandemic.
All right, Susan Jepp there, nutrition scientist and professor of diet and population health at the University of Oxford. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And before you step on your scale at home now to check if you've gained a few pounds too many, let's bring in another aspect of this pandemic, science and its ability to solve problems. Time for your questions, and over to our science correspondent, Derek Williams.
If COVID vaccines work, could the research help developers create vaccines for the common cold? Could COVID-19 lead to a huge step forward in this area?
I love questions like this because they don't involve where we are now, which in Europe at least often feels like a pretty dire place. But instead they look forward to the end of the pandemic and they ask whether all the misery might lead to anything positive. But while it's possible that the vast numbers of research projects being driven by COVID-19 could lead to breakthroughs in fighting coronaviruses as a whole, there's still a lot we don't understand about how they in general evolve and how they're transmitted. What's called cross-reactivity would certainly play a central role in research into any future offshoot vaccines. That's when the weapons that your immune system produces to fight one virus might also work, at least to some extent, against other viruses that share similar characteristics. Some experts believe that cross-reactivity from earlier infections with cold-causing coronaviruses in some people is influencing how badly they get COVID-19 or how easily they fight off the disease. But we still don't know nearly enough about it. One promising avenue, for example, that could help in the development of future coronavirus vaccines involves molecular subunits in the spikes, those proteins that stick out of their surfaces that allow these viruses to latch on to cells and infect them. Researchers have discovered that some of those areas look well conserved in all of the coronaviruses that infect humans. So they're quite similar across the group. That's a great starting point for future work, but it's still just a starting point. So when you ask whether COVID-19 could contribute in a big way to coronavirus research in general, I'd say it already has. But I also don't think that'll necessarily be enough to spawn vaccines in the near term for the coronaviruses that cause colds, though I'd be happy if that prediction proved wrong.